Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here on YouTube, and this week we're completing our series talking about the kinetic chain. So in our previous videos, we talk about the upper body holding specific positions and your hand moving as a causality of your shoulder and torso moving. Then we talk about how to lock your upper body to your hips to allow the motion that is moving the shoulder, elbow, and hand to come from the lower body. Any disconnect at any of these points render this final video almost useless to you. If your arms break shape and move independently of the torso, if your torso moves independently of your hips. So if there's a disconnect at any points of the kinetic chain above the hips, what you're doing with your legs is virtually useless. The energy you're creating with these muscles does not travel up the spine, through the arms, to the paddle, and ultimately into the water. So making sure we're using the upper body correctly and understanding how to lock your shoulders to your hips, now we can finally move our legs to move our hands. So there are two important cues when it comes to the world of paddling and being a successful racer. If you can make the sport into a lower body sport and make it into a pushing sport, you will find higher levels of success. The majority of paddlers make it an upper body sport and they make it a pulling sport. And there are a lot of breakdowns of your movement and your connection of the water if you approach paddling in this way. When we're looking at it as a lower body sport, what does that mean? We are looking to move our legs through paddle strokes in a way that the stroke is predominantly powered by our legs. The benefit of using your legs is they are larger muscles and they can retain more force over a long period of time comparatively to the muscles of your upper body. Transferring that energy to your legs gives you more force for a longer sustainable time, right? So when you watch a paddler that goes incredibly fast and they don't ever seem to slow down, it is because they are making it a lower body sport. When we're looking at the kinetic chain, we have spent a lot of time here on YouTube and on the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com on how to properly engage the leg. If you move your body in this way, you do not properly use your legs to power your torso. There's a disconnect, and this hinging here becomes a lumbar muscular movement. If you are moving excessively at the torso coming forward and back, you are just activating these midline muscles and your legs are just watching you. The only way to involve the kinetic chain in a seated position to maximize the forces of your legs is to use your legs to push and pull at the hips. So as I do this, my legs are moving, and you can see I have this bicycling motion going on with my lower body. Because my upper body is connected to my hips, when this movement occurs, my whole kinetic chain moves to mirror that. So within the kinetic chain, if the legs do not move, and I am still able to achieve some of these movements with my hands, it means that there is a disconnect somewhere along all of these points. We literally want our legs to move, so our hips can literally move, so our shoulders can literally move. If the knees don't literally move and these other joints try to move, they will find range of motion by the surrounding muscles to those joints that are much smaller. You want to activate these very large muscles around the hips to create the forces to move them. All of a sudden, I'm using my abdomen and my obliques and my lumbar and my rhomboids and my lats, and these are strong muscles. And you can go pretty fast with them and you can be pretty efficient with them, but they do not hold a candle to your quadriceps and hamstrings and your glutes and your calves and all of these surrounding muscles that activate as prime movers, and then your core muscles become stabilizers, which is what they're designed for. If these muscles go into motion, they are not designed for that. They're designed to hold a position, and these are the muscles that are designed to go through motion. So looking at the canoe stroke first, we do want to lean forward with our torso in order to put more weight onto the leg. So we have this ability to lean forward in a way that loads your kinetic chain with your body weight. If I move improperly and I lean too much, my weight is ultimately on my sit bones and my feet can move freely on the ground. What we're looking to do here is we want to have this rotation where the knee literally moves forward, the other knee extends back a little bit, right? Like riding a bicycle. You have one leg in flexion, one leg in extension, and we operate from this position. Once I have turned in this orientation, my hips have now turned and my kinetic chain is primed for this rotational movement. Now at this point, I can begin leaning forward. As long as I don't break my posture at my abdomen, you will feel more weight on the quadricep here. We have primed our body for rotation and loaded it with our body weight. What this means is now that my body weight is on this leg, when I extend it, I can use that as an additional force to push off of. We are trying to create leverages throughout the stroke using our movement pattern. So if my leverage point is on my sit bones and I go through the stroke, there's not a lot of engagement and push that you can get with your legs. The movement by itself is only a small piece of the puzzle. We need relevant movement that is loaded by force to go through a powerful stroke. So the order of operations is to pump your legs, move your hip into the stroke, and make sure that your upper body is pushing down onto the hips and your arms are holding a specific position, in this case for positive blade angle. Now I can begin leaning forward. If I go any further forward, the muscles on my abdomen begin to stretch and I have broken my posture. There is a tipping point where I cannot physically go any further forward without breaking some shape that I'm trying to create. If I hold all these positions, I'm stuck here and there's a tremendous load on this quadricep. Now when I push with this leg, everything is connected to power the paddle stroke from your leg drop. This is what makes the kinetic chain so difficult in the seated position. We spend the majority of our time going through athletic motion while we are standing, and as we are seated, these muscles contract towards us. And our ability to move the hips with a tight hip flexor is incredibly limited as opposed to standing. When you're standing, your hip flexors are stretched out and your ability to freely move your hips has increased dramatically. So in a canoe position, we have some extension at the hip flexor, but they're still flexed in a way, right? We're still seated. And so our ability to move in this particular way is determined by our mobility with these tight muscles. If any of these sections are not correct, the energy does not travel through the body properly. So as we're going through anywhere I can disconnect, right? I cannot move my leg, I cannot move my hip, I can overly move at the torso and disconnect my shoulders from my legs, I can bend at the elbow, I can punch my arm forward and break these shapes. There are so many points of power slippage that can occur as we're going through the kinetic chain. It is an ultra precise movement and you go through it every second, or if you're a sprinter, you're gonna go through multiple strokes per second. The amount of concise movement and attention to detail cannot be understated. Don't underestimate how long it can take you to learn all these movements and put them together in a quick and concise way. So in the Surfski position, our heels and our sit bones are going to be much closer to each other. Within Outrigger Canoe in particular, it is about an 8 to 10 inch difference between your seated position from your sit bones to your heels. In a Surfski, it may be 0 inches to about 3 inches depending on the type of Surfski that you're using. As I talked about in the canoe paddle stroke, the tighter your hip flexors are, the harder the motion is going to be, right? So as I'm seated here, my knee is now closer to my body. And the reason for that is my hip flexor has contracted. So to hold this position, these muscles are inherently in a squeezed position. Now that those muscles are tight, our ability to move our hips is much different than when we're standing and these muscles are stretched out. Distance between your belly button and your kneecap dictates how tight your hip flexor is. So in the Surfski position, it's pretty close. If I were to be kneeling or standing, the distance between my knee and my belly button is probably 2 or 3 times as far away. The hip flexor has much more range of motion motion being stretched out. And so we see this cause all kinds of problems in the kinetic chain, right? Paddlers will want to lean back as they go through the motion. Why? The motion of leaning back stretches out your hip flexors, right? So we're trying to fight for this lazy boy reclining motion because this angle is more comfortable than this angle here. So sitting with anterior posture and leaning forward into your stroke, it's very difficult for many people because they cannot tighten these muscles enough. On the reverse side, these muscles on the back side may not be loose enough. So your hamstrings and glutes being ultra tight means that you can't sit in a way that facilitates good posture and your body morphs and breaks down around it. So leaning back and bringing the shoulders forward is just seeing the lower body's kinetic chain fail with its mobility. Sitting in this posture is very important because it means that when this leg extends, this hip is going to competently move and the rest of the body is going to follow it. If I sit in a position like this and I have bad posture, when I move my legs, it looks something like this, right? So there's a lot of paddlers you'll watch out there with a lot of leg drive. Their hands will float around with very low effort because their legs are not powering their hands. Getting all of these motions together, when we go through a stroke, you should see how powerful it is when your leg is responsible for moving your hand. Having the mobility, having the posture, bringing all of the ideas together. The upper body has to hold position to transfer the energy. The torso has to be compressed on itself to push your shoulders to your hips. And now you have to be in a seated orientation that facilitates your legs moving your hips competently. Only after all of this, now we have to wield the paddle in a very particular way and go through the motion for a very set duration before starting the next stroke. All of these things occurring where we're going to take an entire stroke in a fraction of a second, it can be very complicated to get the hang of. But once you do, the boat is going to go incredibly fast. This is why we use speed as a metric for your understanding of technique, right? If you have some semblance of doing all of these things that we explained here, your boat is going to fly under you. But if we're going through these perceived motions and the boat is not moving in an adequate way, it just shows that there are major disconnects within your movement pattern. You don't have to be very strong to move a boat competently. You just have to use the leverages that you have available at your disposal consistently. Excellent. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video here, and it concludes our breakdown of the kinetic chain. If you are having issues putting these ideas together and you need more in-depth help, check out the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com today. We go through every part of the body, every phase of the stroke, and we do it in 3 different categories for our foundational, developmental, and mastery series. So we talk about the same body parts and movement patterns, but as you get more adept at them, some of the language changes and some of the focus goes from big movements to very minor, small movements that can make the difference. We're offering training programs right on the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com as well, and they come in different tiers. If you just need some workouts sent to you, we have a tier package for that. If you want video reviews built into your structure, we have a tier for that. And if you need accountability, video calls, constant emails, anything to keep you motivated and keep you working towards your goal, you have a coach right here that will help you directly. Big shout out to all of our channel members, and their name will appear here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have a weekly vlog series as well as the paddle tip videos here every week. If there's any video topics that you would like to see discussed, feel free to leave an email anytime. If you would like to come to Hernando to do camps, clinics, lessons, feel free to reach out anytime to help schedule that during this winter or any time of the year. If you would like me to come to you and host a clinic for people that paddle in your area for any topic, dragon boat, outrigger canoe, OC6 steering, surfski strokes, downwinding, you name it, I am available and open to traveling all over the planet to help you all out. So please, again, get in touch if you're interested in that. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you all again next week for the next paddle tip video.